Trading is about knowing the field, foreseeing the opportunity, executing at the right moment. Timing is everything.
Away we go once again. Happy New Year, Dream Team. I hope you're all well. I hope you had a belter. And here is hoping that 2022 is going to be a year of years for all of you. A new dawn, all your hopes and dreams, the opportunities that lie before you, the expectations, the promotions, new loves, old friends, the lands of milk and honey on the horizon. And we'll be with you every Wednesday to let you know what's happening for those of us who remain on planet Bin Juice. Hask and the Lord are alongside. Happy New Year, chaps.
Happy New Year.
Resolutions, please.
I didn't make one this year. I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you.
Perfect in every way.
No, the only one that I ever make was to be, which you're going to laugh at, is be more direct in conversations with people. Not more direct. No, just, having difficult conversations with people.
Right. Do we need to readdress be a happier James Haskell?
No, I'm not.
Happy, nice Hask.
No, nice. I just mean things like, cutting to the chase in business stuff and stop skirting around the issue and just going, look, at the end of the day, this
I would say that's doubling down, not quitting.
Oh, really?
On your
okay. Maybe I don't need
personality.
But you see, maybe because you see it on the side because we do business together, that I have been more direct subsequently.
Yes,
Instead
you
of
have.
the elephant in the room. Pick out the elephant.
Lord, how are you going to better yourself this year?
I might try and obviously Doddy Aid is starting in January, so let's get on your bikes, get on your walkers, horses, whatever, get some exercise done. Might use that to drop as I scaled in at just over 108 kilos. I'm going to there's a plan for a few Parkinson's rides later on this year, so I need to get into a little bit of bike shape. But since the young man's come along, time disappears, which I'm noticing a lot more when you've got 3 children. So
upping the exercise.
Yeah, because it makes me mentally feel better too.
That does it.
Yes.
Good promotion. Should we get into it? How excited are you?
Oh, very excited. And nobody else would get me up at 5:30 to drive down to London to interview him. But he's my man crush.
He is your man crush. Right. Let's get into it. The year for us begins with a bang. Normally, we are the good, the bad, and the rugby, as you know, but this week we are playing superlatives. This week we are the greatest, the bad, and the rugby. In partnership with City Index, the leading provider of spread betting, CFD, and FX trading, we are playing today with the boss of the Goat Pen, the patron saint of All Black Rugby. Stand by your beds, ladies and gentlemen. He's won 131 tests, which is more than any other player ever. He was the most capped test rugby player when he retired with 148, although Alan from Wales has subsequently just nipped on the outside. He won more Rugby World Cup tests than any other player with 20, and those wins contributed to a couple of back-to-back World Cup victories, as you do. He's the most capped captain in World Rugby, 110. He's won the most tests as captain with 97. He scored more international tries than any other forward with 27. Hask is shrinking with every stat that we're reading out. And domestically, if that wasn't enough, in his 145 matches for the Crusaders, he won 4 Super Rugby Championships, 3 of which as skipper. And despite all of that, his wife said of him recently, the most extraordinary thing about him is that he's actually quite ordinary. So he's still got something to work on at least. If it wasn't abundantly clear, our guest this week could only be one man. It is the great Richie McCaw. Happy New Year to you. How are you?
Same to you guys. Yeah, very well, thank you.
It's good to see you, and it's very, very good of you to join us as well. How was the Christmas bits? You've got little ones. You've got, obviously, not too much COVID down where you are. How was Christmas and New Year for you?
Pretty good, really. Yeah, we're still pretty lucky, especially in the South Island. COVID hasn't really got to us yet, so things are still pretty normal. And
it should be there by 2026 or something like that, shouldn't it? Normally,
along with broadband and Bewitched.
Yeah, everyone would have moved on, and we're still screaming. But anyway, but no, Christmas was good. Thanks. We a couple of young kids, so it changes things a little bit, and bit of family, and now actually down in holiday house down in Central Otago, so enjoying a bit of summer down there.
Because it was 3 years ago when we were down there for a wedding, and we saw you in Wanaka, didn't we? I managed to catch up with you, and you were training for that mad cycle / something that you were doing 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah. I was actually still training for stupid things like that, to be honest. I thought I'd give that a break, but it hasn't turned out like that. But no, it's a good place to do that sort of stuff. Not that makes it any more sensible, but there you go.
So you haven't gone down the Hask route. So like Hask now is 127 kilos, and playing weight was what, 116 or something like that.
No, 118. Yeah.
Well, you've gone the other way. You've shrunk down a little bit to actually be able to run. Hask can't fit through a door unless he's sideways. So
that's the ego. He can't fit through the door.
I've ended up dropping. I was about 108 when I finished, and down to sort of hover between 98 and 100.
Not bad.
So,
I just don't understand. I don't understand how. So you read the stats, right? What the unbelievable career, the goat of all goats. Yet I can't walk downstairs, and I played half the games, not as well. And you are doing insane, like running challenges, triathlon stuff over like 24 hours, 48 hours, 4 day long. Please tell me, what is it you're doing to be able to keep doing this? Because I don't understand.
There's probably the first thing. I had a bit of luck when I was playing. I didn't wreck my knees. I was just really lucky on that regard. And secondly, I think I still aching stuff at times, but as soon as I stop, I find after a week of not doing anything, I almost end up worse than if I keep going. So I've sort of thought, well, while I can, I'll keep moving. But I think just purely a bit of luck. If you bugger some surface injuries, in your knees and that, I don't think you could do that sort of stuff. So I was just pretty lucky, and I, dropping some weight, and I swore I'd never go to the gym again when I finished playing, but I've had to keep the little bits of that going just to keep the injury, those sort of niggly things away. So I thought, while I can, why not? To answer your question, it's luck.
I just wondered if there was some sort of secret potion, or there's some sort of formula or some sort of root vegetable.
I was looking for something. Luck.
Yeah,
148 caps.
2 World Cups, 4
Super
Super Rugby Championships. Yeah, just a smidgen of the good fortune.
Mate, I wish I could give you something, but
it's been 6 years now since you retired. Does it feel like yesterday you put your boots to the back of the cupboard? Does it feel like a different lifetime ago? How do you, when we read through your CV now, which is the best that there's ever been, does that feel, I achieved all of that, or does it feel like a different lifetime?
Well, it does feel quite a long time ago. When you sort of 6 years, there's a fair bit happened since then, but I think, but it's gone fast. I think would be the there's a fair gap, but it's gone fast. But I find watching these days, it's hard to sort of believe that you could actually mix it with what the guys are doing out in the field at these days. They seem to whack each other harder than I ever remember, and the game seems to be quicker, all those sort of things, and you sort of sometimes scratch your head, wonder how you survive, and are able to compete. But as I say, it's gone quick. I've never missed, never wanted to play again, but I still miss every time you see guys run out the field, that feeling of anticipation and all those sort of things that come with the game. But as soon as the first tackle happens and see that, I go, I'm quite pleased to be watching, but you miss all the bits around it, and I don't think that'll ever go away. But I've never sat there going wishing I was still playing. But just when you sort of read those things out, I guess it's always a wee chance to reminisce, and the good memories start coming forward, which is I guess all you have at the end, isn't it?
How much, in terms of the game now, do you follow? Do you keep in touch with? Do you speak to people in and around the All Blacks, the Crusaders, etc.? Are you still actively involved in it, or have you let the boat go?
No, not really at all. I sort of made quite a conscious decision to make sure I got well away from it when I finished. One, for my own probably sanity, and secondly, teams that were around, whether it be the Crusaders or the All Blacks, they don't need a guy like me, be sniffing around, let them get on with their own thing. So I haven't had too much to do. I still keep in contact with some guys, like over at times Kieran Reid and guys like Sam Whitelock these days, and Sam Kane, purely just chat, fairly irregularly how things are going, and but by and large, keep my distance. And I always said, at some point there'll be an opportunity or a way to contribute or do something to offer something back to the game. And I don't know what that is or where that is, but hopefully the right thing will come up, rather than just sort of feeling in falling into something just because you didn't know what else to do. So that was sort of what's happened. And I suppose it's probably only now when most of the players I played alongside have finished up now where, whether it be the super teams or the All Blacks, that if you ever did have anything to do with a team or contributed somewhere, that it would be a completely new bunch. So who knows in the future, but at this stage, no, not really at all.
You said that obviously you haven't missed the rugby, but when you see on television them running out, do you think that obviously you're a massive competitor? Do you find this kind of the other stuff you're doing at the moment, these challenges, as a nice replacement for that missing that intensity and putting your body through turmoil? Because a lot of times when I watch rugby now, I don't necessarily miss it, but what I miss is putting my body through a bit of hardship, working with a team, suffering. Because I think a lot of people, the average person, doesn't necessarily ever get to do that. Is that what you've done and replaced one thing with another?
I think that's exactly it. And I don't think I would have perhaps missed the game more had I not got into something that really put you on edge, before you stand on the start line, because I guess that's the cool thing about the game you played. When you're standing there looking at the opposition, you don't know what's going to happen, and you realise it's going to be, no matter what the score probably ends up, it's going to be a tough old battle that tests you in all sorts of different ways you're not sure about. And I think that the racing stuff, especially the multi-day, really long stuff where you're in a team of 4, you go through some pretty dark patches where you're actually not sure whether you're going to make it to the end. And the challenges that come with that, I think, satisfies a lot of the stuff that perhaps is the reason I love, and as you say, the competitive side of the game. And I think the other thing is, because I'm still feel fit, and you probably in your back of your mind go, wow, I was as fit as I was when I was playing. You probably, it'd be better than if you weren't, and you go, oh, geez, it'd be nice to be told what to, to get fit again, or to be in, shape where you could play. So I guess that sort of takes away that side of things as well. But I just think the not knowing what's ahead, and not knowing whether you're good enough, and that's the bit that I love, that side of the challenge, and that's what it gives me. Like, it's pretty intimidating when you're standing on a start line knowing that you're not back for probably 6 or 7 days, and you sleep a few hours here and there, and you just eat what's in your bag then, and you get going and hope for the best. That's pretty intimidating, and but I guess that's the challenge I've quite enjoyed.
If you didn't replace kind of the rugby with that, what do you like? Because I sometimes, if I don't train, or I don't focus, or I don't challenge myself, I get quite grumpy, I get quite short-tempered. Did you kind of manifest any of that, or did you naturally fall into the racing, or did you have to replace something? Did your missus turn around and say to you, Christ, Richie, find something else to do, you're driving me mad?
Well, she certainly does that now if I don't do something for a day or so. So it's certainly an addictive thing. But I think I kind of I fell into it a little bit. But I spoke to quite a few people who had given up, and they, some of the things that you sort of try and work out, what is it that you're really going to miss? And one thing is that challenge side, as I talked about. One thing is the physical, where you like you said before, you really test yourself, and you want to see what your body can handle, which probably isn't very good for you in the long run. But anyway, that's what you sort of want to do. And I think it's the team element too, where you do it with other people. That's what I really enjoy, is you actually rely on other people to achieve what you're after. So I kind of knew that there was some bits of like that I was going to miss. And it was just by chance that a mate of mine did the race, the big multi-day race, the year before, and he actually had borrowed a house of mine to do it. I didn't know anything about it, and I started following what he was doing, and I was like, man, I don't know whether I'd be able to handle that. And I said to him, I said, mate, that's pretty extreme sort of stuff. He said, oh, I reckon you'd be able to handle it. And I said, oh, well, one day, you never know, find out. And as soon as I said I was hanging up my boots, he said, we've entered. And this was about 4 months after my last game. So pretty much I got home from the 2015 World Cup. I had a week off, and then I started training harder than I ever had to try and get myself in decent enough shape to not make an idiot of myself at this big race. So I didn't intend on doing that, but that's sort of the way it worked out. And in the hindsight, it was probably a good thing. I didn't let myself, spend 6 months where you're put on a bit of weight and all those injuries sort of sneak up, I was like, man, I've got to get started, and I'm glad I did.
In some ways, do you need that dark place? Because it comes up a lot if you go through things that are written about you. There's taking yourself to a dark place. Do you need that challenge more than maybe you need the physical side of it? You need that dark mental challenge because, Dan Carter said about you after the 2011 World Cup that he sort of almost lost his mate because everything was so focused on making sure you got a team to win the World Cup. Do you need that dark place mentally to actually, I don't know, fulfill,
excel?
Or make you feel that you really are pushing yourself?
I guess, and I do it, so it obviously fulfills something, definitely. I have, as a mate of my wife's who's a clinical psych, and she actually asked Jim one day, she said, is he all right? Because I see a few people that do these sort of things and they're not quite right in the head. And I was like, maybe that tells you something. But
what was Gemma's answer?
I think she goes, I think he's okay.
Yeah, touch wood.
But, not entirely sure, but
yeah.
I hope that's what she said. She didn't actually tell me that, but it's purely the challenge, and I don't know. I think in sport, there's. And I wasn't like this right from the start, but when you're right, you go to some dark spots because of results like we had in 07, and you sort of got a choice. You either go and say, well, man, can I actually handle those tough moments where it's all on the line, or do I just go, well, I tried and I wasn't good enough, and like a lot of others, and I guess there was I know there was a moment after 07 where I was sort of like, man, yeah, you got a choice here. You either roll your sleeves up and go and actually be a little bit open, say, look, I don't have all the tools in the box here, but I'm pretty keen to learn, and I think that's a bit of getting better at it. And as I said about the race, I was sort of fell into it, but when I did the first one, I thought, I don't need to do that again. But I knew that I'd only done it okay, and I thought, geez, I could do that better. And it was sort of that type of thing that, and in some ways, when you try and race it faster, you go to actually darker spots, and I guess you reflect on them. They're the magic ones you reflect on. I know in a race at one point, if I swore to myself, I said, you never ever think about doing this again. You just remember this moment and know never to do it again. And I look back at that now and I go, well, that was the moment that you sort of found out a bit about yourself. And a couple of days later, that didn't seem so bad, and I've entered into another race. So that sort of shows you that I guess it's a love-hate at times, but it certainly provides something for me. And as I say, it's not for everyone. And like you say, perhaps it's something that's wired in me that it's the curiosity of whether you're good enough, and that's the bit that I always love. You don't just turn up and know it's going to be okay. You actually turn up and go, man, what's going to happen today?
The not for everyone line is really interesting, and I'm not sort of reprising the role of the clinical psychologist here, but do you recognise in yourself that you're slightly different when you look at all that you've achieved, but also the relentless drive that you seem to have had from a very, very young age? Do you recognise that in yourself as something extraordinary relative to 99.9% of the population?
I don't know. I think to be able to stay, performing at the top level in any sport or whatever for a period of time, that you've got to be committed to it. You can't just sort of get there and hope it's going to, it's bloody tough to do it time and time again. But when you're surrounded by a lot of people who do that or do that, it sort of becomes kind of the norm. It's not like you consider you're different to anyone else. But I think when you compare yourself maybe with the general public, for some people it's just not what they want out of life. They don't want that, that thing that's always gnawing away at them, whether they're away on holiday or whatever, thinking about, how am I going to turn up in a couple of weeks' time, or you have a day off, how am I going to be on Saturday? And that's hard work to do that time and time again. And I guess for me, that's probably at the end when I finished, that's something that all the pressure and everything that went with it, that was the thing that I probably was tired of. But it's the thing I always said, it's the thing I loved is the thing I got sick of, and it's probably the thing I miss because it's so relentless and stuff like that. But, as I say, you do see that not everyone has that desire or that drive or that want to do it. But the people that do, and I've had a bit of time with some guys who rode for New Zealand, and I've done a bit of training with them over the last wee while. And talk about taking yourself to dark places and stuff. You sort of when you mix with those sort of people, you say, oh, perhaps that is the norm, but maybe it's not so much. But if you're not going to be like that, you're not going to be at the top level for very long, if at all. And I guess you get inconsistencies when you haven't got that real desire.
When I was reading when we put our fantastic producer, Shira, is putting a brief together all about kind of what you've done and everything else. And we're looking at, in your early age when coach or your dad said you weren't fit enough and you kind of went out there and trained. A lot of your performance and stuff was always dictated by how physically present you were at breakdowns and your fitness levels and everything else. But one of the things I was really interested to see was that post 2007, you started working with Kerry Evans, a forensic psychiatrist. A lot of players I know in professional games at the moment, they focus on everything else but the mental side. So you said in 2007, people go, oh, well, maybe we just need to work harder, or we maybe need to be fitter. But actually, that wasn't the solution. Looking at the mental side was so important. How big a transformation was that for you to speak to a psychiatrist, actually look at the mental side, and do you sort of level that as a really important factor in your success?
I think for the team and personal success post 2007, that was the difference really. I still look at the 2007 team on paper, like it was as talented and as good as any team I was involved in. But in the biggest moments, we couldn't deliver. And you go, why is that? And it's got nothing to do with training harder or getting fitter, or we were probably as good as we should have been or could have been. But it was how you handle those moments. And when you say you want to be the best, but you're ignoring those big moments, or how you actually deal with those big moments, well, you leave yourself open, and so that was I think the big sort of moment where you go, man, it's easy to sweat, it's easy to get in the gym, it's easy to run, but how do you actually get better at those moments? And it's not something you just fix in one day or one moment. It takes a long time, like building up fitness, like building up skills. It takes a long time of working on things, trying things. But the first thing was actually acknowledging we needed to put some time and effort into it, and then slowly work at that, and then separate to the team being able to handle it. Myself as a captain, what happened under pressure, and that quarter final where I felt helpless. I was standing there going, I don't know what to do. Every other game had been easy, and I still back myself as being able to play the game, but I was like, man, where do we go from here? And we didn't have the tools in the box. So I think what happened for the next 8 years of my career, that's what gave me a real excitement and drive, is because I realised that I wasn't very good as a captain at dealing with that. I was a new captain, young, but I thought that just playing well was good enough. And then as a team, how do you have a team that might be good when it's not all on the line, but how do they produce it when it really, really counts? And there was a whole lot of things we did. It wasn't just one big magic. It was just a whole lot of little things that contributed to starting to be able to handle those bigger moments better.
Where did that start? Does that start with you, or was it a thing that worked as a team, and it also helped you as a captain as you worked together as a team? Because I know that you sort of turned around to actually walking towards pressure and walking towards intensity rather than trying to avoid it. Where you said there wasn't the tools in the toolbox, what was the first sort of thing that you had to address? Thinking correctly under pressure. Where did you go first and foremost that made the biggest gains?
Well, the first thing was acknowledging you feel pressure and that pressure affects you, and actually understanding that. That was a big moment, because everyone knows that there's pressure on, but you'd never admitted it. You're the best in the country, picked for the All Blacks. You don't feel, it wasn't talked about. So actually acknowledging everyone does feel pressure, and in those moments, it's not so much pulling rabbits out of the hat. It's just being able to execute the really basic skills of what you train, and actually figuring out ways of doing that. So it wasn't like we're trying to go do things that we weren't capable of. It was just going, well, yeah, pressure. When you hit your threshold, you'll do things that you'll drop a pass which you can catch every time. Or you see guys, and we all can picture them when the red mist comes down, they lose it and do things that and that's just when pressure they hit their threshold. So it was actually understanding that sort of stuff, and it wasn't so much saying you'll never get there, because everyone will have a threshold at some point. It's just a matter of how much you can handle, and I think as a team you start to help each other, and then when you're skipper, if I'm starting to talk, with a high-pitched voice to your teammates or the ref or something, it's not a great example for the rest of the team, whereas if you can be calm and actually, be on the task you want to do and actually doing your role well and those sort of things, you can have massive influence. So there was a lot of, I guess, where you start from. And then the other one that I'd say is, a lot of times you go, well, in a game you want to make it comfortable by, doing all the things to make it easy, whereas actually you just acknowledge that it's actually uncomfortable. And once you acknowledge that, you go, well, it's going to be pretty tough and it's going to test you and things might buckle, but as long as they don't break. And when things do go wrong, how do you react to that? So it was sort of starting to talk about those type of moments, not just going, well, we're going to execute what we've trained and we'll be sweet, which is perhaps a little bit of it sounds a bit of the way we went about things before that point.
I think that's the way that a lot of teams go about. That we've talked about on the show before, where teams have lost the first half or haven't played well, and we come in and they review the game and they go, what should we do better? They're like, well, we're just going to train harder and work harder, and everyone goes, yeah, and they leave the room and they've absolutely changed nothing. I wondered, in your in that journey, kind of obviously dealing with pressure, did you uncover anything else about yourself, like any behaviours that you were kind of like, wow, that's a bit self-destructive? So for example, I know you didn't experience many losses, but if you lost, did you take it to heart? Were you overtraining at times? Did you ever suffer any kind of, I've talked about it in lots of things. I always, contrary to my general demeanour, didn't always back myself. I struggled with confidence around my performances and took things to heart quite a bit. And that's something I consistently had to work with. And I worked with a psychologist from kind of 17 onwards to 36. Did you uncover anything about yourself you were surprised about, as well as obviously working on the pressure stuff?
I guess things that became pretty obvious when you started to think about them, but I just never really acknowledged it. And like, there was a really simple thing that I would do if I made a mistake. What do? You try harder to make up for it, and you usually I would always double up. Whether it be a penalty or a drop. You end up doubling up, and that was just because you were you're worried about what you've done, so you're trying to overplay, overcompensate, and so a big thing for me was actually being able to not have double up. So I don't have in my mind when you made a mistake is just just be aware that this is the moment you're probably most vulnerable to go and make a double up, and so being able to change things like that was quite important. The other, I guess I just knew that when I got under pressure, I'd go quiet and things would start happening around me. So it was just actually being able to catch myself and go, well, how do I get myself back into not being a passenger, being back in sort of contributing in the situation. Things like that were things that were kind of obvious once I pointed out, but I didn't really understand that was this, what was happening. What you do about it becomes the next thing, and the other one is you want to go out and play well, and you go out there and things don't just happen. Some games they just aren't flying for you, and that's when when I was younger, I'd go and overplay, try and make hero play type things. You go and tack a breakdown that was completely the wrong one to do, or try and put a big tackle on, end up missing, things like that. Whereas some games you just accept that it's not going to go your way, but you've got to make sure that you're doing the job of the things you need to do 100%, and you might only get one or two opportunities in the game, but if you make those count, that can have a massive influence in a tight game like a test match. And but if you're not doing the other job right, and doing all the bits to contribute to the team, well, you miss those opportunities, or you made mistakes along the way. So there's things like that I never really thought of that started to become a big part of how you get the consistency in performance. And I think that was the thing that I probably always thought about a lot, is how do you make sure you never let your performance drop to, say you're rated out of 10, and you expect to be at least an 8.5 out of 10 every week, So it's not so much that you're 10 out of 10 every time you play. It's just making sure you never have one of those 6 out of 10 performances, and it's working out how you do that. And that was the biggest challenge, I guess, I found.
I dreamed of a 6 out of 10.
I was going to say, Hask was a good month if he'd got a 6 out of 10. Yeah. What's absolutely fascinating... yeah, 1 or 2. What's fascinating listening to the three of you bounce this around, Richie, is that for all the success that you enjoyed in your career, the first thing we've spoken about is 2007. And I desperately want to come on to some of the greater days and some of the trophy lifts, but I do just want to ask you a couple of questions about 07. And I instantly go back to that photograph of you in the press conference after the quarterfinal. It's one of the most sort of harrowing rugby photos of you in that grey kit, essentially. Do you look back on 2007 now, and do you still wince at the pain and the agony and how it went? Or have you grown so much from it that it is an integral part of the journey in all that you then achieved?
Did you see it as what led you to 2011 and 2015?
Yeah. I got no doubt that had we not had that pain and that everything that went with, that tournament and that game, we would never have looked at ourselves as closely. Personally, I wouldn't have. And we wouldn't have addressed some of the things that we, like the team in 03 had the same sort of issues we had in 07, probably the same in 99. And we hadn't actually spent time looking at what happened then. That was sort of some other team, whereas I was actually in that team in 03. But we didn't actually address some of these things, whereas 07 forced us to, because I was lucky enough as a captain to still be there. The coaches were still there, so we actually had to look at it. And for 4 years, people would ask, "What's the worst moment you've had as an All Black?" Well, that day was it. I look back now, and it was probably one of the most significant days of my career, in a good way now, because it opened up the door to things that would never have happened. It still hurts when I look back, but the things that happened afterwards certainly have made it sort of nowhere near as bad. And one thing I'd say about that, for a long time afterwards, I just wished that I had a chance to go and play that game again. Start again, things you do different. In 2015, pretty much, if you're ever going to get as close to playing that game again, we got to play France in Cardiff at a quarterfinal, and we got our opportunity, and we took it, which I guess
just the 62, whatever it was.
Am I right in saying that players from 07 emailed you in the aftermath of that game in 2015 to say thank you for exercising the ghost?
There was a couple that I heard from that were pretty thankful.
Can you name names?
Well, I talked to Aaron Major actually, who was in the team, and he just made the comment, rather than thanking me, he just we sort of buried that one. The one I remember was actually John Hart was who was coached in '99 actually, and it even meant something to him. He was obviously the team that got beaten in the semi-final against France, and he just said that game meant a lot after what had happened, 8 years earlier. So, I didn't really understand it until you start hearing little clips like that from people.
It's funny that, we talk about, we've all three of us have played at this high level, and you talk about the pressure, but what is it, whenever we tour New Zealand, there is more pressure on us as we play, because it's made to be felt that way. We've always talked about the young kid who will come and do a haka in front of you in a coffee shop, or every single, whether it be man, woman or child, knows who you are, why you're here, and they like to tell you that you're not going to win. So, but yet when we play for England, we never had to carry that. It feels that when you're in New Zealand, you are literally carrying the weight. Is that where a lot of that pressure that you needed to learn to run towards comes from? Because there is no escape, because it is pretty much everyone who wakes up in New Zealand wants to be an All Black, wants to chase that dream, and you're living it for them, and they expect, it's a disaster if New Zealand, like what they are now, lost 2 on the bounce. It's like unheard of. Whereas we lost more games than I care to imagine, and yet you're going down all this soul-searching thing, and we had to get used to losing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. For Richie answers, I was going to say it's so fascinating that we're talking about 2007, where the expectation was for them to win a World Cup. When 2011, we lost to France in the quarterfinals, didn't get booted home, worst touring English side ever. 2015 didn't get out the pool side. Yes, we have these whole reflective moments. Eddie Jones came in. But he's talking about a defining career moment because the expectation was they should have won. And you look at it from our point of view, like, wow, I didn't see that as a big deal. They're a great team, but it didn't happen. When the shoe's on the other foot, you're right, that pressure. I mean, what can you articulate, Rich, as Mike says, like what is that pressure like when everybody wants to be an All Black?
Well, I think you can carry that as a burden. And I think at times that has been, perhaps when I was early in the career, it's sort of like, all the tension and everything that goes with it can sometimes be pretty, suffocating. But if you turn it around and go, well, if people didn't care and didn't have that expectation, how would that look for us compared to where we are now? And we'd be pretty disappointed. That's one of the things that makes sure that you do everything right, leading up to, no matter who you're playing a test match, let alone, a World Cup. It means that when you do lose, you have a good look at what it is that you need to get right. And I think when you change that viewpoint around, it's still going to have that expectation, that pressure there, but I think we changed our view to, rather than going, we'd rather not have it, is actually go, that's what makes playing for New Zealand special. That's what, why people want to be there is because that's what goes with it. And actually embracing it and going, well, rather than sort of be scared of, just making sure you get through without letting things down, is actually go, how do I go and add something to it? And it's a really subtle difference, but it changed the way we looked at it. And as I say, you wouldn't want it any other way. If you look at the alternative of having people don't really care, that wouldn't sit great for us when we were sitting in the changing room. So we were like, bring it on and embrace that. And as hard as it is at times, and as tough as it can be, when you do have a loss, I think that makes sure you don't allow that to happen too many times.
I want to come on to 11 and 15, obviously, but can we just go right back to the beginning, Rich? I want to ask you, what were you like as a kid?
Well, I don't know. I grew up on a farm in a little community where rugby was the only winter sport you played, and I think I went to a school that only had I think it was 24, 25 kids, and all we did at lunchtimes and playtimes was play rugby. And so my parents always say came home from school pretty much first day and said, I want to play rugby. But I don't think I started till I was 8. A country lifestyle. We had one All Black that played one test from our little community. He was a legend of the place, and it was in the 70s, it was a big part of the community was the rugby club, but we were a rural community, and as I say, on a farm, it was isolated, but it wasn't a long way away from anywhere, I guess I always had the view of love playing sport, but I was always going to be a farmer when I left school, and it was, I guess, what a lot of the kids around the place where I grew up thought.
Was it a sheep farm? Did you practice tackle jackal on the rams around?
Nah, well, we had a few sheep. Yeah, we did. Funny, I get asked that a lot by, especially the French media. They love that question. But I would have chased a few over the years. But we were mainly
all the Welsh media asked too.
Cropping farm.
But you know what, Sean O'Brien, when we interviewed him, he genuinely said the reason it was all right at ball carrying and footwork was because he had to chase sheep all around the farm and throw them into the back of trucks. So I think that's where the narrative goes. But you're obviously dispelling it. You need to start adding the story. The reason I was so good over the ball was because I was chasing sheep. Turns out you were just good over the ball.
Well, I could say I used to shear sheep, and now you're bent over sheep with a handpiece. But I didn't even do that. So. No, we were mainly cropping, actually. We grew arable crops, a few sheep, a few deer. So a bit of a mixed bag. So I'd be lying if I said that was my thing, chasing sheep around all over the place.
But
my footwork wasn't really up to it to even justify anyway.
Got you. But you're obviously now, you are the patron saint of All Black Rugby. Were you a golden student? Did you work hard? Were you very sort of good in class, or were you always wanting to get out on the field and a bit of a tearaway?
At secondary school, I put probably just as much effort into the schoolwork as I did sport. Really, I kind of had it in my mind that often people would let one do one and not be able to do the other, and I sort of had in my mind, I'll prove that I can put the same effort into both, and so I was able to make sure I did okay at school. And then to be able to go to university and stuff like that. I didn't just sort of cruise through school. I probably worked harder than I needed to, but I was always pretty proud of being able to say you played for the first 11 and first 15, cricket and rugby, and also do all right in exam time.
So what you're saying in a roundabout way is that you were the perfect golden child that we all thought you would be, an absolute teacher's pet. Did you bring an apple for teacher every day, Saint McCaw? Because I fucking bet you did.
Of course I did. No, of course not.
I don't think you finished uni though, did you? You didn't get to finish it because you ended up going to the Crusaders. Is that something that still weighs on your mind, that you didn't manage to finish something?
I was only 2 papers from finishing too, to be honest. I went to a university just out of Christchurch called Lincoln University, which has quite it's one of the agricultural type angled universities. So I was always going to go, left school, came to Christchurch to go to do a agricultural science degree, and rugby at that point had only been professional for 4 years or 3 years by that point, and I never really considered I was going to have potentially have a career as a rugby player. So it wasn't until I got selected in a New Zealand under-19 team in my first year at uni, and I got pulled into the Canterbury Rugby Academy that I actually sort of thought, well, maybe there is an opportunity. So I tried to balance, doing the study and the stuff you need to do for that until what really made the finish the degree, or mean I didn't finish, was getting selected for the All Blacks on the 2001 tour, which was probably a little bit before I'd ever expected. And so I sort of thought it was a good time to stop. And I kind of wish I'd carried on, but if I had a choice between going on an All Black tour and finishing a degree, I think I know what I'd pick.
I got a question, just having followed kind of you on Instagram. I know you've kind of only been on there for a little period of time. From the looks of the outside, you've obviously got an amazing relationship with your parents, and there's a thing here. I think, I'm not sure where it came from, but after playing, your dad told you to get fitter, and you took yourself off and did a 3K run, or so the story goes. Was your dad a pushy dad, or was he like a helpful dad? When we talked about when we interviewed Kieran Reid, he was kind of talking about his thing with his brothers and playing outside all the time, and his dad sort of encouraging them. We've had other players saying that their parents were kind of like, do 10 passes of this hand, 10 passes of that hand. What was your kind of relationship with your parents like?
I was really lucky. I had really supportive parents, but certainly not pushy. And the one comment I just remember, and I think I recalled the story. When I first started playing rugby for the first 3 or 4 years, I remember the coach saying, we only practice once a week. He said, you should go for some runs, to get a bit fitter. And I was like, oh yeah, but I'm doing okay. I was one of the bigger kids that could run over the top of these little fellas, and I thought it was all pretty easy. And that was one of the comments that he obviously thought he could lend a bit of encouragement, saying, you enjoy it more if you get fitter. And I was like, I'm enjoying it pretty good, really. But, for some reason, and I don't know what it was, I decided that I'd start getting fit. It was my intermediate year, just before I went to high school. And the thing that really, I used to hate things like cross country at school and things like that. But after it was 3 or 4 months, and I kept a diary, and I've still got it. I just found it the other day that I noted down each day I went for a run what I did, which was bit crazy for probably 11 or 12. But we went in the cross country and I got second, which I barely finished it in the years gone by. I was like, man, actually training does pay off. And it's probably from that moment on that I always thought, certainly the rugby became a bit easier, and you actually could start to think about how you could be involved a bit more and get puffed out on the field and things like that. And I guess that was sort of the catalyst. But my parents certainly didn't make me go for a run. They didn't tell me I should do this or that. They were just always supportive. They'd come along to pretty much every game they could to watch, but they never really said a lot. Just sort of well done afterwards, and that was about it, really.
Were you a routine guy? Did you have to have a routine that you stuck to throughout the week? Was that part of the process? I'm just sort of comparing it to someone like Wilco, who was so routine, knew he had to be fit. He was unbelievably fit, but it had to be done in a routine. Everything was specific. You could literally say where he was going to be at what time of the day, because that's just how sort of religious he was about it. Yeah. Were you that sort of type as well, in terms of you had to make sure you ticked every sort of box?
I had a pretty good routine, I suppose. I sort of knew the things I needed to do each week, but I wasn't so fixed if I didn't get that, or something came up, or something changed, or that it wasn't going to affect Saturday as such. I sort of looked at it more as the attitude, so that if I just decided one day I can't be bothered doing something I know that's going to help, it may not help on Saturday, but over the long run it will. That was the bit that I tried to make sure I got right. As there was a good reason for things that would be different or whatever. So I sort of tried to be quite flexible, but I never wanted to allow that attitude of if it was the right thing to do, then you do it. So I think as years went on, I became pretty diligent about getting those things right. But probably the one thing I did have a really pretty strong routine with was because you can pretty much guarantee it most weeks, is that hour before kickoff where you get that right. And I wasn't so things didn't happen the way I wanted that, well, I could handle it, but I tried to make sure I got those things right. But what I remember, it was actually 2003 we played a test in Sydney, and this was early on when I was almost to the point where I had to do everything absolutely spot on, otherwise it put me all out. And the bus got caught in traffic, and instead of being at the ground 70 minutes before the game, we were still on the bus, and it was 25 minutes before kickoff. And I thought they'd sort of moved the kickoff out. We get there and they said, no, you're starting in 25 minutes. And I was all over the show, but we went out and we managed to put 50 points on the Wallabies, and it was one of the best performances I've been involved in. That was a really good lesson to show that you can adapt to things. You don't have to have it perfect. And so I sort of always took that on. But I knew that if the attitude was meaning you were doing things different or changing, and it meant that you weren't getting it dead right, that's when your performances would start to follow. So I guess that's sort of the way I looked at it.
I wondered about this diary. I mean, what else was in the diary of an 11-year-old Kiwi guy? I mean, was it just training? Because there's a great quote about your uncle asking you, to write down the process of becoming an All Black, and at the bottom you wrote GAB, Great All Black. I mean, was that in there at that time, or was it just I seen a nice girl run 3K,
chasing her?
I'm getting his hairs on my chest.
To be fair, I didn't know what to write in it. The only reason I had a diary was because my father, purely to keep up with what he was doing on the farm, he used to write down all the things he'd done, so he knew when he had sowed the wheat or put the fertiliser on, all that sort of stuff. And I saw that, and I thought, I'll start doing that, but I didn't know what to write because I hadn't done anything all day. So I thought, I've been for a 3K run or something like that. So that's pretty much all that was in it. But and answer the other part of your question about my uncle that I've talked about, it was after I got selected for a New Zealand under-19, I talked about before, training camp, and we got given a training diary, which was the first time I actually it was just after I left school, with a program to follow. I was like, that's pretty cool. And that's when he said, well, you should, if you've got a goal of being an All Black, map out how that's going to be. And I was like, I'd just quite like to make the under-19s, to be fair, And anyway, wrote all that down, and he said, you put at the bottom, eventually be an All Black. I was like, yeah, I suppose that, yeah, of course I want to be that. He said, well, if you're going to be an All Black, you might as well, you need to what goes after that? Great All Black. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a bit mad. But anyway, I wrote that down, and it wasn't until about that was in 99. 2002, we sold our farm, and I had a big clean up in my bedroom at home, and I found that bit of paper that I'd written that down on, and by that point, on the bit of paper, I'd had a goal of being an All Black maybe 2004 or somewhere around that. By this point, 2002, I'd already been in the All Blacks 2 years. I was like, man, I've ticked off everything along the thing except, the GAB at the bottom. And I guess from there, it was sort of like, well, that's a thing that you never ever achieve, really. It's just, an attitude that you should carry with you every time you turn up. And I guess that's sort of how I lived it. Whenever you had a choice, should I do that or shouldn't I? I'd always ask the question, what would a great All Black, if you're looking back, reflect on? What decision would they make here? And I guess that was sort of drove me a lot for a lot of the things I did.
If you cleaned up my bedroom, all you'd find is a couple of porn mags, a BB gun, and maybe like a penknife. And I don't think there's any sort of diaries with anything in them. How to be a good digger driver was potentially what I had in my diary.
But what's really interesting, Richie, and just to pick up on the gab element, is that Dan Carter said about you, Richie McCaw was worse than me. He reminds me of Michael Jordan, The Last Dance. More planned and detailed. He knew exactly where he was going. He was going for greatness, which is a lovely quote in itself. But was that something you internally just hung on to, or was it something that others recognised? I mean, Dan obviously recognised it because he was probably going for something very similar. Was it something that you just shared with others around you to inspire, drive, and incentivise them?
I don't think I necessarily talked about those sort of things. Like it was a thing that I guess it was a desire I had, and I wanted, rather than tell people what I was going to do or how I looked at, I just thought my actions are what actually is going to be the thing that shows whether they marry up with those sort of things, and people will observe that. So I'm not like I ever like it. It wasn't until a long time afterwards that I even mentioned that that's what how I was thinking. It was purely, a way I wanted to turn up and hopefully inspire people around you, especially when you're in a leadership role in a team. How you carry yourself, how you go about, things that are, whether it be training or how the team operates or all those sort of things. That's what people see. They don't necessarily follow words or follow people. People that act the way like in those actions, and that's sort of what I did. And I guess hear people like DC and that observe that. That's a nice thing to hear. And I guess I didn't want to tell people to do something. It was actually I wanted to show them what I wanted to do, and hopefully they'd be inspired by that, and hopefully that sort of.
Was that an easy way of you being captain? Because you look at captains of the past, you get numerous people. You get people who like to beat the drum. You get people who like to show the emotional side of it. Yours was purely by actions during the week and then on the field on a Saturday. It wasn't, because you would say you're naturally a shy person, not necessarily easy to get to know, because you're not just going to go in there and start telling your life story. So is that the only way that you could deliver it for the team, is by just showing good positive actions and sort of follow me rather than listen to my words?
I think that's got to be that was always the first thing to get right. Like you have to be able to use words and use people around you and be able to not just just go and play and train and do all those things well. You had to, but my thing was, if I got that right to start with, it allowed me to do all the other things or work on the other things that actually could really complement that. But I always found if you didn't have the performance right, or you weren't getting that right, it was pretty hard to start thinking about the team as a whole, or helping other players, or even a senior player group, talking about how the game needs to be played or changes, all those sort of things, if I didn't have my own sort of side of things sorted. So that was certainly the first bit I tried to get right. But I think 2007, like we talked about before, just getting that right doesn't mean you can as a captain, especially, in the big moments, it may not be enough. You may need, well, first of all, you need other people around you to help. And, you need some trusted people that are, senior players that want to help lead the team and drive the team along. And then hopefully they can, you get that right, then that starts to filter through the whole team so that those times and those moments, you can be effective.
The very fact that you kind of actually had a plan and were working on this stuff, for someone like myself, I think it's really kind of, I don't know what the word is, kind of really almost fascinating because, as a player, obviously someone who played against you, and I've gone on record as saying you were someone that was an inspiration to me as a player because you're the best at what you did. You were obviously kind of a closed book from the outside. Obviously your performances kind of did the talking, but actually, even though you might not have ever verbalized the fact that you wanted to be a great All Black or you had this plan or you work on it, I think it's for everybody to know in any area of life, it's good to know that you had a plan. Do you know what I mean? You were actually working on these things and not necessarily verbalized, because sometimes as a person on the outside, you go, look, here's someone at the top of their game. Are they actually considering these things? Are they considering their behaviors? And for some people, obviously we watched The Last Dance, you quoted that Michael Jordan. He, yes, he had certain things, but he was so incredibly naturally talented. I wonder how much he actually thought about it. You obviously are an incredible talent, but it's really interesting to think that you were thinking these things, even though you weren't telling anyone about it. I think that for me as a player, for anyone taking note, you might not know what's going on, but like a duck on water, you might seem calm, but you're paddling like fuck underneth.
As a wise man once said, I love it when a plan comes together.
Yeah.
Hannibal Smith. Can I ask you about DC? Because actually we interviewed Dan, a few months ago, and you two rode side by side for so long. He was very, very effusive and just said, without a doubt, Richie is the GOAT. And I think we asked him the question, if you saw Richie now, would you greet him with a nod, with a handshake, or a hug? And I think he said he'd end up hugging your handshake, which is a kind of very 2021 COVID style kind of greeting. Is that true?
He's probably about right, actually, to be fair. I think as you get a bit older, you get a little bit more less stark, don't you? I don't know. But he's probably about right. But just talking about DC, like I was incredibly lucky to have a most of my career with a guy, both at club rugby and international, that was driving the ship at 10 like him. So there's, and I think as probably we talked about footy as you do, in a team, but when you've been out of it a while, you sort of realise that some of the things that the challenges you had and how you look at things, and I guess the pursuit of wanting to be good, you get out into the different world of whether it be in a business or whatever, it's quite different, and it's quite nice. Some of the chats I've had with DC lately, about those sort of situations that are quite different in a sports team. It's quite good to see other people have the same sort of observations and I guess challenges that come with it. So that's what's been quite cool. You get to reminisce a bit. You don't have to worry about what's next week. You can sort of, what do they say? The older you get, the better you were, and you can start talking like that. So that's been quite cool. The catch-ups.
And in terms of, obviously, they say opposites attract, etc. I mean, you obviously South Island, a lot of farming community, etc., etc. Dan loves a bit of Louis Vuitton. Very prolific on social media, etc. I mean, do you rip into each other when you see each other, or is it just knowing nods, etc.?
I gotta be really careful because I threw a lot of stickers way around social media and stuff, and I've joined the dark side. So you gotta be a bit careful. I gotta eat a bit of humble pie on that, but probably there's always a bit of banter around that, but. When I first got on Facebook, which was back in 2015, I had to ring him up and say, "Hey mate, you need to give us a bit of a shout out here to get a bit of following here." So I can't really throw too many stones these days.
You went to the dark side.
You went to the dark side.
Who knew?
You are the Dark Lord in that case.
Who knew Richie McCaw was asking Dan Carter? It's quite a nice person to contact. One of the things with your that kind of that personality, you and DC together, obviously very different, both very dedicated kind of people. Did you rely on him a lot in kind of the leadership stuff? Because a lot of stuff you've said about yourself was initially if things didn't go your way, you were quite quiet, but you can't do that as a captain. You have to kind of, even behind closed doors, whatever your demeanour might be, you need to kind of set the emotional tone for the team. Did you rely on other players when you were captain quite heavily to offer something that you didn't or didn't naturally have?
I think that there was a huge part of it. And if I be honest, in 2006 and 7 when I was first captain, I thought you had to have all the answers as captain, and whenever there was an issue, you had to be the one that had all the things to say and how to fix it. And it becomes a pretty lonely spot because people don't bother contributing when you're like that. And when the heat comes on, then they always look at you. So I guess after that, I realised that when you looked around the senior player group and the All Blacks, for example, you had guys that were all captain of their club teams. Some of them had been, had captained the All Blacks on occasion, and they all played as many tests as I had, or a lot anyway. And why aren't we using the thing that I realise is we need to be contributing to come up with the right solutions. And I guess the thing I always said, I always thought I had to have all the answers as captain, whereas I realised that as captain, you just need to make sure you find the right answers and didn't care where it came from. And if you've got a bunch of guys, whether half a dozen or whatever, that have all got, pretty good rugby knowledge but slightly different ways of looking at it, you can come up with some pretty good solutions to issues you have and actually be able to drive the team in ways that perhaps I wouldn't have thought are the right thing. My job was to create an environment, so that we could all make sure that we contribute in the right way at the right time, so that we're out in the field, we knew where we were going and we could drive the team the way we wanted.
How did you do that? Because I know Alex was going to talk to you about kind of your first experience into the All Blacks, what it was like as a young player. But for example, say we fast forward to 2011, 2015, I come into the All Black squad and you're at the figurehead, right? So you're obviously your qualities and stuff speak for yourself. You're very dedicated and focused. I mean, for what I know of you, if you and I were two peas in a pod, you'd be a pea and I'd be a broccoli, completely unrelated. You're obviously studious, quiet, and not outwardly kind of extrovert. If I looked at a captain, I saw you and I was like, right, he's quite quiet, he's humble. How did you then encourage other players to kind of expose their personalities? Because a lot of times when I've seen with All Blacks and especially Kiwis, they're quite quiet, they're quite reserved. You talk a lot about being humble. I think in New Zealand, from what I've seen, there's a bit of almost tall poppy syndrome sometimes going along. What did you have to work quite hard going, listen, guys, I might be quite quiet, but feel free to knock yourselves out, or how did you kind of run that as a captain?
I wouldn't say I was quiet when it came to dealing with where we wanted to go with the team. Like I wasn't like I sat back and just allowed things to happen. I was if I needed to front up and do those things, I did that. But in answer to your question around new guys coming into the team or whatever, I think probably being a bit shy. Like I probably wasn't someone who went and got to know the young players straight away. And I remember someone saying, well, we made ourselves known to these. I said, oh, well, my door's open. They come and see you, and they go, really? A 20-year-old kid's going to come and knock on the door of the All Black captain and say, how you going? And I was like, I didn't really. It wasn't because I didn't want to. It was more of a thing. I've got to actually make the effort because, of course, there's going to be a natural sort of apprehension to that. And what I found is, just going actually chatting to some of these kids that are as nervous as hell and, finding out a bit about them, you start to understand, people come from all sorts of backgrounds, which is what makes a team like the All Blacks unique. But also you start to understand the people, and I think that's became a lot more powerful. And when you've shown some interest, amazing how you get people wanting to follow along where the team's going when they feel like you believe in them and want to get to know them. But I also am also a believer that as a young player you come in and earn your stripes as well. So you don't come in just expecting that you've made it. You've got to do your time in a way. But the thing that you don't want to do as an environment is set people up to fail. You want to give them the tools that they need, but they've still got to take them and earn their stripes. So it's getting that balance right, because I think what you might have asked, Alex, when I first came to the All Blacks, it was a wee bit more, probably the old school days where, probably more so the Super Rugby, where, until you'd actually got out in the field and put a couple of performances together, you didn't get spoken to a lot. It was sort of like you're just a new kid and we'll see how you go. And I kind of didn't mind that because I was sort of like, well, I'm going to prove or, really go and make sure I get the job done and play well to earn their respect. But for some players, that didn't work so well. And sometimes, talented people, if you just, perhaps made it a little bit easier in terms of know that they're good enough, they might have done something different. So that's kind of the way I sort of progressed from going, well, they'll just come in and do their thing to actually, you can have a balance that I think if you get that right, it can be pretty powerful, really.
Imagine if I was in the squad and you'd said, any young players, do you want to come in? I reckon about after an hour, you'd be like, Haskell, could you get the fuck out my room?
I didn't mean move into my house.
I'll make the teas. I'm great at making the teas and steal all your kit as well.
I think you'd have failed at the first hurdle, which is the no dickheads policy. You'd have never got past that, unfortunately.
You also had that sort of hot dogging thing, didn't you? Where if someone was a bit active, someone was like Hask on social media, you'd bring it in, you'd put it all up on screen. Were there any classic stories on there of people doing naked photo shoots and having a lot to sort of answer to in front of the team?
I can think of one person in particular. Who was the worst offender? Who was the worst offender at hot dogging?
It was probably quite lucky. Social media wasn't really around the day, but the worst culprit for it would have been Ali Williams. If it had been around when he was
surprise, shock horror.
But we didn't have to put up with that. What amused me is that some of these young fellas, they get on the social media and then they sort of realise they've done something stupid and they sort of can't work out how everyone's found out about it. Pretty obvious.
Did DC did Dan get a bit of abuse when he was up on billboards in his Y fronts? Did he cop a bit of flack for that, or was the money so good that no one could get a hammer?
We all tried to give him a bit of stick, but it was sort of like it just was. He goes, oh well, it's you get paid pretty well to do it, so you can't really argue, can you? And most of us looked at that and go, there's no way I could be standing up there in my bloody undies with a figure like that. So to be fair, he didn't get as much stick as he perhaps should have, but yeah.
I wanted to ask, obviously. Adidas with Stade Francais, we had that time when you guys came over to Paris. You had that kind of connection after the end of tour. Did Max ever try and lull you to do the calendar? Because I know he was after Dan to get in the calendar as well.
No, he didn't. But I remember one night we played France, and anyway, we were at a pub and Max was there, and he did have a couple of the boys lined up for the calendar. I think DC obviously was one of them, but he was certainly. I think Andy Ellis might have been getting a tap on the shoulder. He was a guy as a halfback for us for a while, and I was a little bit miffed at the time that I didn't get a tap on the shoulder, but quite thankful.
They don't go away, unfortunately. You can't delete them once you've done them.
Hask?
Yeah, I did it 4 times, Richie. But again, obviously, my morals line up with my general personality and demeanour. So,
can I take you back to some of the good bits? So, debut against Ireland. Was it 2001? I think it was. Man of the match. The most natural sort of start to a glorious international career. What do you remember of the day you became an All Black?
Extremely nervous. I'd only played. I think about a dozen games for Canterbury at the time, and all of a sudden you're starting a test match. It was I was pretty nervous, and I just didn't want to go out there and make a fool of myself. That's what I was sort of worried about. But then on the other side, excited, and I remember the bit I remember is we obviously got named, and we went to Auckland and we had a couple of days training together before we left, and then there was a midweek game against Ireland in Belfast, and I was on the bench for that game, and I didn't know whether I really wanted to get on the field or not, because I thought, well, get on the field, you call yourself an All Black, but I wanted to play on Saturday in the test match, so I was sort of like, so I didn't actually get on the field that day, so I was had to wait another few days before you got that chance. And I just remember it was Andrew Murdens, who was the number 10 at the time. I remember when the whistle went, he kicked off. I remember a sense of relief. I said, well, like it was a really quick thing, but it was like, now I can at least say I'm an All Black. The whistle's gone. Whatever happens now, doesn't really matter. And then, I remember the first couple of minutes, I spilt the ball at one point, and I was like, geez, this is all but getting away on us. And then the game ended up, we were a wee bit behind in the second half, and the Lansdowne Road crowd she was pretty vocal, and I was thinking, geez, this isn't working out so good either. But we had John Aloma in the team, and he got the ball a couple of times and pretty much just ran straight through them, scored a try, and it pretty much changed the game. I remember thinking how cool that was to play alongside a guy like that. So I guess that's sort of the memories I have from it. It was a pretty cool experience. Like the best part of the year for me was the autumn test in the Northern Hemisphere, where you're away on tour for a month, playing at some amazing stadiums with, pretty much full houses, like those atmospheres and things like that to play in. That's why you play the game. And the moments sitting in the changing room, this is the bit that I always miss, is that half an hour after a game where you've gone out and performed, and if you've been successful, sitting there with your mates, having a beer, reflecting on what you've done. Like anyone that doesn't play the game won't understand that, but when you've played the game and know that's the bit where I get the enjoyment. Don't necessarily always enjoy the game itself because of what goes on, but it's that moment afterwards that's where I got the real fun out of. And we were pretty lucky. We had I was pretty lucky to have a few moments like that.
I'm really interested in just particularly the early years of your career, because you played under John Mitchell, and there's been a lot written and a lot said about John Mitchell's All Blacks, and they hit it pretty hard on and off the field. And am I right in saying that the 2004 tour to South Africa was a real sort of watershed? Graham Henry changed things quite significantly off the back of that. So from 2001 to 2004, were you always as focused and as driven and sort of singular in what you were doing, or was there ever a time where the off-field stuff and the way that the All Blacks were running, hot on and off the pitch, sort of got you to a point where you're thinking, hang on, I'm wavering a bit here? Did you ever lose focus from your singular goal?
Well, I think from when I started in 01 through to probably that 04 period, I was probably just out to play as well as I could. I didn't, the team, because I was a new player, I just wanted to contribute and just do my thing. And it was almost sometimes, if the team hadn't played so well, but I'd played really well, I didn't feel as bad as if it was the other way around, because I was just really wanting to, play better and better. But I think, and it was like this, I think most teams around the world, it was still very much had some of the amateur attitudes around, what you did after games, and sort of all those sort of things. Professionalism in some way had come through, but certainly, having big nights out afterwards, all those sort of things were still very much part of it, and it was very much part of the culture of rugby in New Zealand until around that period of 2004, where I think everyone really started to realise, if you're going to be serious about performance, and people getting paid pretty good money to do this game, you can't afford to put performances at risk through some of the off-field things you do. And it's even the same how you turn up after a 4-week break or whatever at the end of the season. Turning up and dreadfully out of shape because you've done nothing has sort of started to become not the norm. It started to become unacceptable. And the big part of it was have a group of guys along with the coaches drive the team, not just the coach telling us what to do and everyone else sort of following on. It was actually a bunch of players saying, we're going to drive this team where it needs to go. And it took a while for those things to change, but that was kind of the catalyst for that. When you're in a professional team, I think we all sort of knew that wasn't the way it should be done. And it wasn't until actually it was addressed and said that, we need to change a few things. It wasn't just that. It was was actually attitude to, after games, how you pretty much start your prep for the following week if you're playing week after week. Things like that, that takes a while, but that starts to become the norm, and everyone in the end it just that's what you do. And for me, it wasn't so bad, because if it meant you were going to be better at what you did and the team was going to be better, I was into it.
We could talk for many, many months, if not years, about all the success that you've enjoyed. But just to sort of pick up on, I suppose, the headlines, we were talking about 2004 and how that was a bit of a sea change. 2005 in the Lions, one of the great All Black teams. Dan Carter's performance in that second test, do you remember being a part of that and thinking, Jesus, the man's on fire? Were you just so busy doing your role you didn't notice, or with hindsight, was he overhyped on the day?
Oh, no, he had a pretty good day, didn't he?
Pretty good, yeah.
One thing, at that point, I felt I had one of my better performances that day, and I was just a bit annoyed that he'd taken all the glory. But no, look, it was. I guess just everything that was around that second test, especially, and the whole series. To see him, and he had only really started slotting into number 10. The November tour just previous, so it was sort of, see him do that was pretty special, and it was a pretty cool to be involved. Like, there was, as I say, there was a lot of hype and everything that went around that tour, sort of culminated in obviously winning the series. And the second test was pretty special, and it was a hell of a performance. I was just pretty pleased he was in our team and not playing against them.
Do you remember? Do you remember that tour as a very happy occasion for the All Blacks? Obviously, you won it quite comfortably. Or do you remember the sort of the antagonism that filtered off the field? We're talking obviously specifically about O'Driscoll, Tana Umaga, Kevi Mealamu, etc. Do you look back on that with fond memories as a great All Black team that achieved exactly what they wanted to, or does it have a slightly sort of sour taste to it?
Yeah, I don't think we quite realised. I knew there was a bit of obviously what happened in the first test, a bit of I guess attention and debate around all that, but almost galvanised our team to just want to get on and play the game. And it probably wasn't until later, and you sort of start to understand different viewpoints, and realise that it was probably a bigger deal than what we realised. We were just so keen to get out and get the job done, and there was a few things were questioned obviously around that incident, but we were just like, we'll just get on with it on Saturday. What's been done is done. All the things that have happened, we can't change it. We just got a game to win, and in some ways it just brought us pretty close together to do that. And it was a pretty, you talk about unique things you get to do in rugby. You're probably lucky if you get a chance to play in a Lions series, and I think all of us were just pretty happy to have been able to do that, and obviously get the win we're after.
We must talk about 11 and 15. We keep talking about the fact we're going to talk about it, so let's get into it. Where are your medals out of interest these days? Are they in the sock drawer? Are they in the National Museum of New Zealand? Where do you keep your winners' gongs? Yeah.
They're sitting. Well, they're not quite in a sock drawer, but they're right beside it in a wee drawer. Yeah. I've always wondered what to do with it, whether you put it up or whether you, I just moved house, so that's why I know exactly where it is. I've always wondered what to do with it, it's sitting there.
If I had it, I'd be wearing it now.
Like the Baracus.
I suggest you frame it, because I don't know, who was it we had on that had a World Cup winners medal, and they were, they found the kids holding it.
Jason Leonard.
Yeah, Jason Leonard.
Flush it down the loo.
Flush it down the toilet. Yeah, that was. He said that he let the boys were playing with it. And he said that he heard them like making noises, and he opened the downstairs toilet, and they were holding it above the loo, pretending to flush it. So obviously, I know girls might not be interested at this age, but I wouldn't. I'd get it framed on the wall if I were you, or both of them on the wall. Hypothetically, your new house, and God forbid it does, but unfortunately, there's a fire, and you can only grab one of the medals, 2011 or 2015, on your way out. Which one are you going to grab?
Probably 2015.
Really? Because?
I probably enjoyed that tournament better. Like the 2011 one had, it was a real battle. I always said, we were hoping we'd just survive, and we kind of, that's what we did. We survived in terms of we got through. Whereas 2015, it felt like it was things sort of fell into place the way we wanted. We didn't have too many bad setbacks or things that sort of didn't go our way or didn't fall into place like we wanted. And I think, to have been able to go from 2011 through to 2015 and have the success we had and then be able to finish it off, with a pretty good performance in that final. I think the 3 performances in the knockout games all had something pretty different, but tested us in different ways. To be able to handle that, that's what I'm sort of most proud about. And I guess a team from 8 years previous that, cracked under pressure, that couldn't handle those big moments, to being able to turn that round and actually really enjoy those big moments when it was all on the line and actually kind of went looking for them in a way. That's the bit that I really have fond memories about and reflect with a lot of pride on. And just from a personal point of view, the last game I played, that final, I probably rate it as one of my better games I've probably played for a whole variety of reasons. But to make that your last game where you feel like you didn't go and just limp to the end, you actually went out and performed to a pretty high standard, that sort of a pretty satisfying way to sign off. So I guess that's the reason I'd say that one.
We reference you quite a lot, particularly with you, Hask, because James and I have spoken over the years about, I suppose, unfulfilled moments in his career. And I've often said it's very unusual that people get to write their farewell script in the way that you actually did, which is your final act in an all-black jersey was to lift the Webb Ellis Trophy at Twickenham, back-to-back World Cups off the back of a sensational solo performance. It's not often you can ask the question of someone, what is it like to go out in that flashbulb moment where it really is rugby? Yeah, I've completed it.
Well, it's pretty cool. But the thing knowing, that if a World Cup's going to be your last time, it's either going to, especially when you feel like you're good enough to win it, it's either going to be extremely good or extremely bad. It's not going to be sort of, oh, well, it was sort of okay. But I think I remember when the final whistle went, it was sort of one of those games, whereas 2011, it was just can't wait for that final whistle to go, whereas we were sort of got a bit of control towards the end. I actually didn't want the game to finish because we were having some fun. And when the whistle did go, I remember the first thought, I was like, man, that's it. There's going to be no more times in this jersey. And then I actually caught myself and I thought, actually, this moment's the one you got to really savour and make the most of, and really remember and enjoy your last moments as an All Black wearing the All Black jersey. And so from that little moment onwards, I just made sure I enjoyed everything that went with the next bit around the trophy and all those sort of things. And I left my whole kit on, boots, everything, as long as I could until I finally had to take them off, knowing that was probably going to be the last time. But I wasn't sad. I was just really happy and enjoying it, and knowing that I guess done what you'd set out to achieve. 4 years earlier, when we got back together after the 2011 World Cup, I remember talking to Steve Hansen about what we thought we could do and where we thought we could go, and to be able to get there was pretty special.
Just a quick word about 2011. It's really interesting, actually, charting your World Cup career, which was obviously agony into relief into ecstasy. But that 2011 tournament, I love the quote from Steve Hansen on your foot injury. We all decided not to ask him about it because then morally we'd have had to do something about it if we had, which is a very Kiwi attitude. How bad was the foot in those knockout games? And how the hell did you get through?
It wasn't great. But it wasn't like the thing I wasn't going to just play and be out in the field if I couldn't function good enough to do my job. And the thing that was annoying, it had been on and off throughout the whole year. I'd had a stress fracture, I had a screw put in, and then things that happened because of that caused the problem I had at the World Cup, which ended up breaking. But the doctor and she was great because we talked around. Like I was thinking about is this going to cause problems down the track, and we sort of came to the conclusion, well, probably not. But if there's a minute chance, is there games where you'd risk that in a World Cup knockout phase where you still got the possibility of playing? Well, you would perhaps if there was a very small chance that's you'd probably risk it. But we were pretty confident that wasn't going to be the case, and it was my big decision was whether I thought I could do my job right, and if I could do that, then I was keen to play. And the great thing that the coaches allowed me to do was to pretty much not have to run on it during the week. So that meant I didn't make it any worse or anything like that. It certainly gave me a test to be able to prepare, without being in part of team runs and stuff like that. But it was. I was just thankful to still be out in the field. I looked at my old mate DC who couldn't even get out in the field. I was pretty thankful that I still had that opportunity. So, but there's no way I could have played another game after that. Like I knew I had 3 games if we went all the way. I was pretty much broke it down to 240 minutes, and even after the quarterfinal, I was like, right, I'm down to 160. I was sort of thinking of it a bit like that, and bits that were manageable. And
was it just pain? Was it just pain? Was it just purely having to play with a lot of pain?
Yeah, well, it was quite swollen too, so I was just making sure I got that under control. But it was one of those ones that when the ball was in play, you could kind of, as I say, you could focus on what was happening ahead of you. It was when the whistle went and you sort of had a lull and you think about it. And probably the worst moment was when you had to run up the tunnel before or after half time, because the old sprig was right on that, above that bone, and of course on the concrete pushed straight onto it. That was the worst part. But you could kind of put it out of your mind. So it was, just saw it, and yeah.
Did you play with anaesthetic?
It was worth it.
Did they put because when I had my toe thing, they put anaesthetic in it, and that sort of would wear off. You'd have to get another one, and that was pretty horrific. Or do you just take painkillers and suck it up?
Well, I took some Panadol, so that was what I took. Really.
He's such a hard. I love that. I'm there getting anaesthetic. Well, I just took a couple of aspirin. Hask, carried on.
Tell me about the emotions of 2011. At what point did the achievement become something you were ultimately incredibly proud of, as opposed to the relief of having got the job done?
It was probably the next day when they had the parades around Auckland. So there was, I don't know how many people, but there's thousands of people were lined the streets. The first thought I had through my mind was, man, if we didn't win last night, there would have been freaking riots or something around these streets. But that was when it sort of hit home how much it meant to everyone. Like I think the cool thing about having the World Cup in New Zealand is everyone had a hell of a good time. They really embraced all the teams, and it was a really cool atmosphere. And I think the All Blacks winning for the Kiwis certainly topped that off and made it all that cool stuff in the 6 weeks prior worth it. Or, it topped that off. If we hadn't have been able to get across the line, it might have soured all that. But
would New Zealand have exploded if you hadn't won that 2011 World Cup?
They'd have taken the plug out of it and sunk it.
Well, I don't know. I hate to think. I remember the morning of the game, I thought to myself, I was like, man, I'm thinking if we don't win today, my chances of being captain again probably aren't great. If captain that's had two World Cups he's been in charge of haven't been able to win. And then I was like, oh, that's pretty unhelpful. But it probably had a bit of reality to that. But But then on the other side of it, I also remember thinking that day, I thought if you were told you only ever got to play one game of rugby ever, what game would you pick? And for me, it would be a World Cup final for the All Blacks at Eden Park. And I was like, I'm sitting here today getting to play that game. And that, makes the hairs stand on the back of my neck now. But that's where the excitement came from. And I was just like, man, this is what you've waited for 4 years to go and have a crack at. And what will be. But it won't be through a lack of throwing everything into it. And I guess that was how I wanted to approach it. But when that last 20 minutes, when that final whistle went, it was just complete relief. And I was like, man, I'm meant to be happy now, but I'm just so thankful that's over. And and that we're on the right side of it.
Were you ever thinking that you were going to have to rely on Beaver coming fresh off a boat to knock over the kick to basically put you ahead and secure it?
All that hard work and greatness that you aspired to, and he came off a white bait fishing trip in a kid's jersey and kicked the winner. I mean, you can get to the same place via two very different routes.
Yeah. The thing is, I always say to people, because I ask that question quite a bit, is, there's not many times or not many countries that could pull on their fourth choice first 5'8" who's actually played 20 tests and actually knew the systems of the team and actually, had the things that, you'd want and guy coming in. So we're pretty lucky in that regard. But the one thing I'd say about him is kind of he had nothing to lose. He'd been through a pretty rough patch when he got dropped after 2010, and he had a chance. If things hadn't gone the way he wanted, well, he's no worse off. But he had a chance to go out there, and he pretty much. I know when in the second half he was on there, he was directing things like he'd been there all the way through, and when there was the penalty that we were awarded, he goes, "I have a shot," and I was like, "Oh, okay, yep. It sounds good," because he obviously wasn't the original kicker, even when he came on. So I really enjoyed the fact that he was confident like that. And I think he's probably pretty pleased. It was sort of 30 minutes to go when he took that kick. It wasn't sort of 30 seconds to go. But in saying that, he still nailed it.
Am I right in saying you turned down a knighthood off the back of 2011?
All that sort of stuff is great, and people deserve it. And I have no issue with it all. I just didn't want to be still in the All Blacks, carrying around something like that made me any different to anyone else in the team, and that was just my personal view. And after 2015, I actually got awarded the Order of New Zealand, which is also an award that's alongside, very similar to a knighthood, which doesn't carry that title, which suited me. I thought was pretty cool. So I still picked up that after 2015, but I just.
So what you're saying is now you're ready. If they would like to come back now.
Tins, make the call. Make the call.
No, I'm quite happy where I am.
Very good. It's funny you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you about just it's almost summing up now, but just the role of one of the greatest rugby players, full stop, and certainly one of the greatest All Blacks, separate to captaincy. Were they two different roles for you, or was it always just one role that you had to fluctuate between the role of outstanding player and outstanding captain?
I think they're very much linked. But there's a lot more that goes with being a captain to just being able to play well and to be able to, have the other responsibilities that come with being captain and things you got to think about, along as well as getting your own house in order to be able to perform. That takes a bit of work, and it's quite a challenge and something that wasn't real easy at the start. But in a funny way, I ended up captaining both club and international more times than I wasn't. So it kind of became the norm, and it was probably I think it was the last year of club rugby, so 2015, playing for the Crusaders, and I hadn't been captain for a couple of years because Kieran Reid had done it, and you wanted to help him out as much as possible. He did a good job, but you don't want to step on their toes and things like that. And there was a couple of games he's injured, and I was captain again, and it kind of felt easier when you are captain, and I actually went and played better probably because of that. So it was sort of, I guess, became the kind of the norm, and I enjoyed the challenge of it. Like, you sort of get your performance right, but then if you can have an influence over the rest of the team, how they perform, and inspire them, and provide things and help that they can go and do that job, and the team does well, that's pretty satisfying. And I think that's where I got a lot of, I guess, satisfaction out of being in that role.
There are so many things we haven't been able to talk to you about because of time, etc. But I suppose just in wrapping up, do you still have a notebook now? And if so, please tell me that's more interesting stuff going in than Fairy Liquid, Weetabix, wet wipes, and AA batteries. What is in the notebook nowadays?
Well, no, I'm not as religious as I was on those sort of things. I guess the things that when I finished playing, I got into, we talked a bit about the venture racing, but the flying was a big part of it, and I ended up involved in a business and being a commercial pilot, which is quite a different challenge, and there's a few things that you're learning along the way, and there's a lot of things you need to remember and stay on top of to get that right. So that was a big part of it. I've done a lot less of that. COVID sort of helped out on that front, but I think some of the habits I had that served me well, I probably haven't been as diligent as I would have been, but in the rugby days. But there's at times I think I should be things you do, you can be a bit more like that, and I'll probably, if I'll be honest, be a bit more in fits and starts than I, as religious as I was when I was playing. I don't even know what I'd write in there.
I know something you could write in there. Must follow James Haskell back on Instagram.
Get over it.
Oh, is it? Have I not followed him?
No,
Sorry,
you
mate.
fucking haven't, mate. Shattered my entire dream.
You spend too long on there when he knows that you haven't followed him back.
I'd save yourself the time. What is it you're flying, and what is your commercial route?
Helicopters, just locally in the Canterbury area. So business I was involved in, we do a bit of everything. So flight training, scenic work, commercial utility work, so the firefighting, frost protection, lifting work, and we also do agricultural work. So a bit of everything. So I don't actually do any of the agricultural work, but I do all the other stuff, and including a bit of instructing. So we have a flight school, so I have done a bit of teaching people to fly and stuff like that. So yeah, in helicopters mainly.
Can you imagine the pressure of saying, I think I'll learn to be a helicopter pilot, and you climb in for your first lesson and you're sitting alongside Sir Richie McCaw, not quite yet, but maybe one day type thing. Hask, how would you handle it?
Well, I'm booking a flight to New Zealand now to get qualified as a helicopter pilot. I reckon one lesson he'd be like, sorry, your regular instructor can't be with you anymore.
He's quit.
What was it like after the wake of both earthquakes? Obviously, in 2016, you had to find the rescue workers, and how much of that was how hard or to see your beloved country go through those couple of things? How hard was that for you, or were you happy that you had a role that you could play within that?
Yeah, so in 2011 when it happened, obviously wasn't involved with the flying at that point, and I was actually had an operation on my foot, so I was on crutches. But they got us to do some stuff in the media, but people were in a pretty tough time, so they got us to do a few things. It felt a wee bit, what can you say when people lost houses and some, unfortunately, been lost loved ones and stuff like that. So you felt a bit like I did it, but I did. I'm not sure you sort of helped out a lot. But in 2016, the earthquake happened in Kaikoura. So we had a reasonable shake in Christchurch, but no damage as such compared to a bit further north. And I'd not long had my commercial license. I hadn't done a lot. And our business got called to take the urban search and rescue people up because there's been a collapsed house. And I wasn't meant to fly. There was 2 helicopters to go, and one of the pilots had a medical that had lapsed, but for single pilot crew, so he needed a second pilot. So he said, you jump in beside me and we'll take these guys up. But that helicopter was a 6-seater, and the starter motor, something was wrong with it, so it wouldn't start. So we had another helicopter there, but it was only a 5-seater, and we had 4 of these USAR guys. So he's like, well, I can't fly it, so you better go. And I was grinning from ear to ear going, this is awesome. I get to do something for real and helpful. And so we steamed on up to Kaikoura, and I was sort of, as I say, grinning from ear to ear that I was actually doing something that was, helpful and actually, proper sort of work, if you know what I mean. And but I got brought back to reality a wee bit when we landed beside a house that had collapsed, and the sad part was someone had been killed inside it, and that brought me back to reality. But put that part aside, the fact that you could actually do something that was proper and helpful in that situation was a pretty cool thing to do. And one more bit to the story is we then took we flew around to check some people that were cut off by rivers that had washed out bridges and stuff. And there was a lady who lived up this gully, and she said, she had no cell reception or anything, and she said, and they'd been right at the epicenter. It was really bad, and she was really worried because her husband was a doctor in town, and she couldn't get hold of him and didn't know what had happened in town. So actually to land there and say, I think where your husband is okay, nothing's collapsed, and that you could see just a relief on her face. And I was like, man, that's actually a pretty cool thing to have been able to do. So it was in a bad situation to actually do something positive was as I say, it was pretty cool to do.
Wow. Don't know what I'm doing working with you two when we could be working with inspirational figures like this.
I know.
Go on.
Richie, there's one final question that the audience in the Northern Hemisphere desperately need to know the answer to, because it's a very ever discussed point about you. At the breakdown, Richie McCaw was A, technically perfect, B, nothing to see here, C, cheating bastard.
Technically perfect, I'd probably be. But that wasn't,
it goes along with the CV, doesn't it? No one's going to argue.
Yeah.
I think that's complete.
I always say though, there's a little bit of grey area in rugby, and you just got to work out whether you're on the darker side or the lighter side of grey.
Did you get away with it? Genuinely, were you very good at getting away with it?
I don't think I was very good at all, especially as time went on, because refs were watching me like a hawk. So you had to be even more perfect. That's the way I looked at it. Look,
it's also a pat on the back at the same time, that, isn't it? Because obviously in every referee meeting, every coach is going, he's doing this, he's doing that, watch for this, watch for that. So you were ultimately setting the bar that everyone was trying to follow or trying to catch up to.
Yeah. I guess the thing that went home to me is I was playing. I'm not sure if it was international, but it was a game where I heard the referee said hands off 7, and I wasn't even in the ruck. So he was obviously programmed to say that before the game started. So I was like, oh wow, I'm sort of no one here today. But I think one of the things that I'd say around that, without getting too technical, is actually knowing the time to where you can have an impact and where you can't, and it's actually knowing when you can have a ping, and I always said the game always delivers half chances, and it's a matter of being able to look for each one and know which one's the right one, and it might be the first that's offered, it might be the 10th, but you got to know which one to take, but you got to be looking, because there'll be always half chances, and if you can get that right, then most times then you'll have an impact on the game. So that's kind of how I looked at it.
Teflon.
No, honestly, this is
you can't land a blow.
No,
even now.
This is the nauseous I'll ever be. Having watched literally hours, it was the best to ever do. No, I don't. Like people always debate it. There was no. I didn't see any cheating. Like I genuinely, what you say when you see someone play like Richie did in terms of that breakdown, and when you say had the most influence over a game, there was no one better. And genuinely, I don't watch anything, but I watched enough of that to know. And also, if you look at it, how many times did you get yellow carded in your career?
For the All Blacks, twice, I think.
Twice. Do you know what record I've got? You got twice and twice. Do you know what record I've got? The only record I've got in international rugby, I'm the most carded English forward of all time, and I'm 3rd on the all-time list. So that's someone who didn't get away with it.
Final question. We started with this remarkable list of achievements. Do you ever run a bubble bath, light a cigar, pour a whiskey, and just kick back and go, it was pretty good?
I think one of the things I did when I was playing is I probably, if I had a regret, and you asked me earlier if you had any regrets, is along the way when you achieve some of the things, whether you really enjoyed them as much as I could have, reflected after you won a tournament or won a World Cup or something, because there was always next week, there's always something to be better at, and if you sort of sat around admiring what you'd done, you miss the next opportunity. And I say I regret it. Well, I wish I'd sort of enjoyed it more, but then again, it may have impacted what you did years gone by. So there's times where you see things that pop up, or you see teams that have challenges, and you go, yeah, we had that, and we managed to get through that, or yeah, geez, I know what it was like, but we were able to navigate that. That's when you sort of have a wee sense of pride with what we've done. But certainly, there's a few moments like that, and the odd time little things pop up that just remind you of certain moments, and you sort of, you can nicely reflect. I'm not someone to boast about it, but just to yourself, you sort of go, oh, that wasn't too bad.
I love it. Wonderfully understated.
Yeah.
Current All Black crop, they're going to be all right. No need to panic.
There's plenty of talent there, and sometimes when you lose a couple on the bounce, that causes you to reflect all the little things that you may have looked past when you sneak home in games or whatever. So, but you look across the talent that's there. There's no reason why they can't bounce back. And one of the things I always know is, and when we had a couple of tough patches like that, doesn't take a lot to turn it around. But if you just expect it to turn around without doing anything to make it turn around, you won't. So I guess that's the challenge for them, going into next year. But amazing the November tests, from what I saw, how close a lot of the games were. It makes it pretty exciting for international rugby going forward.
You're on holiday. What do you got? Sandcastles or a bit of fell walking? What's on the agenda for the next week?
At the lake, so a bit of water skiing today, and started off with a kayak and a bike ride, and then the day on the lake water skiing. So it was a bit of fun. Kids enjoyed that. So pretty lucky to be able to do that.
What are the girls writing in their notebook that you got them for Christmas?
Not quite at that stage yet, but don't worry, it won't be long.
Quite right too. We'll catch up long before then, I hope, to find out how they're going. Richie, you're a star. An incredible career, and very, very good of you to swing by and have a chat with us on the good, the bad, and the shambles. Look after yourself, and we'll hopefully see you on a touchline or in a corporate box somewhere for a prawn sandwich soon. Thank you very much indeed.
Look forward to it. Thanks, guys. Have a great 2022 too, and to see you next.
And there he goes. When we said rugby, you've completed it. Is that now rugby podcasting? We've completed it?
I think we might have done. We've sort of got the trifecta, haven't we? Because we've got, there's a couple of people you could bolt in, but we've had Carter, McCaw. Is there another one in the triangle that you would want? We've had Wilkinson.
Sonny Bill. We haven't had Will. We need Wilkinson.
No, we haven't had Wilkinson.
We need Jono. We've got to do the English trifecta, but I think we've done the All Black trifecta.
Yeah, we pretty much have. We completed it. And when you look at his kind of rugby CV and you sort of ask if there's any more, and he has honestly done all of it. And won it all. It's not just taking part. It's not like, I took part in a Lions tour, or I played in a few World Cups. It's like, I won it all, apart from 2007, and I was really, really, really good at it.
Yeah.
And everyone really liked me, and I was really humble. And now I'm, taking part in 4-day competitions, revolve running and mental fortitude. You're like, oh.
That was the most extraordinary line of all of it, is that after 2015, he took a week off and then trained harder than ever to do Ironman or whatever it was. I mean,
yeah, he's a unique character. We had a good day. He came to Cheltenham races once. Can't remember whether that was straight after 2015 or no, it can't have been, because that'd be the wrong time of the year. Literally, he was just mobbed.
Really?
You talk about the pressure he must have had back home, but then everywhere he went, every rugby playing nation would always know who Richie McCaw was and want to have a photo, and he was too nice. He definitely didn't need the velvet rope that Hask needs to keep people away from him. He was quite happy to welcome people in and let people nose him.
Do you think, just from talking to him, once you peel back the layers, the characteristics, like the amount of people sort of we've interviewed, and you see sort of character traits. And because I always regard him as a bit of a closed book, but you actually see, do you know what? Behind closed doors, he was formulating a plan. He was revisiting it. He was looking at the mental side of the game. You know, if the greatest player potentially the world has ever seen, or one of the best to ever do it, looks at his mental game, perhaps some other players, younger players, people in business should perhaps visit that. I think that's a salutary lesson to take from it. I also think, you know, the determination, all the things you would want to find, or you normally find in people who are successful, you found in him. It was amazing.
I think what's really interesting is when you compare some of the greats that we've had on this show. And I think it was off the back of Kieran Reid. I remember saying to Kieran Reid, you wear your greatness very lightly. And I think Carter the same, McCaw the same, but there's a steel that you get when you talk to Richie McCaw that sets him apart from all of the others. It's just, it never turns off.
No, but I think what was interesting was about, you know, the fact that he's replaced, because I would wonder what someone like him would do, you know, just to go from all of that to nothing, to stand still. And it's no surprise that he has gone and undertaken a super physically challenging thing. Because I wonder if, and I've seen it firsthand myself, if he didn't have that, what would his mental health be like? What would he be like to live with? What does someone like that, and someone like that needs to test themselves, someone like that needs the dedication, someone like that needs once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week to put himself into a dark place, and actually needs to strive and actually work with people. And I tell you, we didn't get onto it, but one of the things I found very difficult about retiring was I missed the teacher-pupil relationship that you have in sport. You're coached, you go and execute a skill, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. He was basically saying the same thing. You know, how do you, if you want to get better, how do you improve? You know, what can you do better? Well, he did a run, thought, oh my God, I'm never going to do this again. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And then goes 2 days later, actually, I could probably go and do it better. Yeah. And then goes and works harder. That's what normal people don't appreciate, that we all miss. And each one of us, you know, yourself, has found other avenues to do it in. And that's why I'm all over the place, because I have to do it. I've had 6 days off, 7 days off, and I'm losing my mind.
Yeah. You rang me yesterday and said, I want a job. What have you got for me? And I said, I haven't really got anything. Right, bye, I'm off. Yeah. Okay, calm down, James. It's a Sunday. It's 6 o'clock.
It's funny, the body forgets. You can put your body through a fair bit and it'll go, I'm never doing that again. And then it'll go, actually, it wasn't that bad. I spoke to someone over Christmas who is in his first two terms of the SAS, and he had 2 weeks off. And I was like, how are they? He was like, hell. And I was like, okay, but he goes, but now I look back at it, it was hell when I was doing it. Now I look back with it, and yeah, actually, I know what's coming. I can sort of cope with it, and that's what the body can do.
The more I work with people who've played at the elite level of sport, the weirder I think you all are. And I'm sorry to say, I mean, he's the greatest, but you are dealing with a 0.01% percentile.
But I think you have to be, and I think this is what I get very upset about with society at the moment, is that we champion mediocrity. We try to make all of our goals and dreams feasible. We tell people they can do everything. We tell people it's okay to take part. Everyone that we've talked to that's ever been super successful, has reached level, has made sacrifices, dedication, has gone to places that nobody can understand. And I think we do ourselves a disservice. And I don't think you can underqualify just how odd and dedicated you have to be, and how abnormal you are, and how anyone has actually ever been successful has to do this, and that it's not for everybody. And we've got to stop telling people it is fine for everyone. That if you want to achieve anything, you've got to have a plan, you've got to have a routine, you've got to go to dark places, you've got to seek other people for help, you've got to constantly look at yourself. And even he won all that stuff, and he turns around and says, you know what, I regret not celebrating, and I didn't win hardly anything, and I still regret not celebrating. And I had a similar mindset of going, I wanted to move on to the next thing. But actually, you know, I think everybody suffers from that in a certain degree, because, or those who want to be successful, because that's the way you have to be. That's your recipe for success. It's just in retirement, you have to unwind that a little bit and go, do you know what, I am going to savor these moments. I'm going to find stuff that I do enjoy. Otherwise, you go stir crazy, and you can see why so many people find it hard to adapt.
Mama once said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. We've done 2 shows pissed. with not a word of sense uttered. And this week we've done the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
What are we going to do next week?
I don't know. What will we pull out the hat? And then, do you know what? We'll just go and visit a rugby club, bring the house down, raise a load of money. Next time we'll do something stupid. I'll be dressed as an Amazon driver.
Hold on tight. I think 2022 is going to be a lot of fun. Well done, Tins. Your little black book has delivered once again. Many thanks to the great Richie McCaw. We have been The Good, the Bad and the Rugby. We'll see you next week. The show is pulled together by producer Shara Kilgallen, the world-class fixer Matt Chuck Norris. The Good, the Bad and the Rugby is a Folding Pocket production. Bye for now.